Hi everyone. This clip is about step 4 of the collaborative model, how to identify the interests at play for the participants. To illustrate this step, I'm going to use a real-life situation. It's a story about Ted and Stella, two neighbors, and a dog named Jasper. Ted worked shift work, and he'd get home, 7:30 in the morning, try to unwind for a while, and then try to get some sleep. Stella was up early in the morning. She'd get ready for work, put Jasper in the kennel about 7:30, and then head off to catch her shift. About the same time, the neighborhood children would be heading off to school, and they'd walk by Jasper in the kennel. Jasper wanted to play, and he barked at every child that went by. Now, if you live in Western Canada near the Rockies, and you have a dog named Jasper, there's a really good chance he's not a Chihuahua. This dog can bark. Stella wasn't aware that Ted wasn't getting any sleep until she got a call from the city about the dog bylaw. Under the dog bylaw, Ted had a right to a restful sleep, and Stella had to either silence the dog, lock him inside, or get rid of him. Not great options, and you can see the adjudicative model, the either-or type of choice, playing out. So let's picture that instead of proceeding under the dog bylaw, Ted and Stella had a collaborative conversation. So as soon as Ted noticed that this situation wasn't working for him, he approaches Stella. They set the parameters for the conversation. They exchange perspectives about how the situation is unfolding and how they're each being impacted. Then at step 3, they've identified the issue neutrally and broadly as something that they could work on together. And now they're at step 4. They're ready to identify the interests that are at play in their situation. While there's a whole list of things that are said to be descriptors of interests, it's a good way to think about it, to think, what are the objectives that would be served by a good solution? I'm going to use a flip chart to capture the interests as they unfold in the story, and I'm going to separate them into basically 2 categories. What is it that they want, and what is it that they want to avoid in how they resolve or how they address this situation? So this is what the flip chart would look like if I were the facilitator for their conversation. And I'm going to ask you to picture that either of them could keep track of a similar information on just a plain sheet of paper between them, or even in their heads if they're good enough with their memories. So Ted's perspective is about, he comes home from work, he can't get some rest, so rest is important to him. If he talks a little more about it, he might mention that he likes to get some exercise and he's trying to stay healthy. And so it's clear that exercise and good health are important to him. Let's add those. Stella has been listening to learn as Ted talked about the situation and how he was being impacted. And then she starts to talk, and she talks about the idea that she lives alone and that Jasper is important for her for companionship. During COVID, there's lots of COVID dogs out there. I think everybody gets that. Stella talks about liking the neighborhood and that she's been good neighbors with others. And so Ted might note that having good neighbors is important to her. When Stella is talking about Jasper, she might mention that she keeps Jasper outside because it's fresh air and she wants to have a healthy, happy dog. So, hey, let's add that. Ted agrees with Stella that the dog health is important. He likes dogs, he likes to see healthy dogs as well. And one of the things that really ticks him off is that Jasper isn't getting enough exercise. He's locked up all day. So one of the things that Ted wants to avoid is Jasper being locked up, not getting exercise. And like any dog owner, really, the last thing that Stella wants to have happen is for her to lose Jasper. And so avoiding losing Jasper is a big thing for her. Let's add that as well. take a step back with me and look at the interests that they've identified. And remember that this started with Ted figuring that calling the city was the only way to address this situation. When you look at what they each wanted and wanted to avoid, notice how compatible their interests are. Is there anything on Stella's side that wouldn't be important to Ted? Is there anything on Ted's side that wouldn't resonate with Stella? I suppose it's because we share so much as human beings. For whatever reason, it's incredibly rare that interests aren't compatible just like they are here. And there they have it. They've identified the interests at play. They know what they want and what they want to avoid. And now let's go back for a second to those three options from the dog bylaw. Silence the dog, lock it inside, or put it down. If you were Ted or Stella, wouldn't it be obvious to you when you look at this that the three options under the dog bylaw don't help either of them, and they don't get them what they want, and they don't help them to avoid what they want to avoid? In my next clip, we're going to pick it back up with Ted, Stella, and Jasper, and we're going to work through the generating options that they did and how they addressed this situation in a way that worked for Ted, for Stella, and even for Jasper. Stay tuned for the next clip.